Moving on to item 4, which is the adoption of a health and safety enforcement policy, which I will introduce to you myself. As the local authority, we have a duty to enforce the Health and Safety at Work Act in local businesses. Traditionally, this has been through enforcement. Following on from the cutting red tape challenge to reduce the burden on smaller businesses, this enforcement has changed. No longer do officers carry out routine inspections for health and safety. They now look at other targeted interventions in conjunction with the Health and Safety Executive's enforcement policy, code and guidance. In order to reflect this, the Public Protection team have worked with Medway and other Kent authorities to draft this policy. This policy lays out to the businesses the approach we take to health and safety enforcement and the options available to us. By working together and adopting this policy, we will ensure a consistent approach across Kent. It is also important to highlight that this policy also includes the more informal contact with business, where they are offered information and advice. I would therefore like to propose that we agree adoption of the Health and Safety Enforcement Policy as laid down in 3.1 of the report. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Brim. And move on to people who wish to speak under 24.1. Councillor Ken Gregory, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is obviously a template, and in actual fact, if you look on the internet at councils like Eden up in Cumbria and Rushmore, they use almost an identical template for this, so it's obviously common across the country. However, firstly, there is one flaw in ours, and that's on page 10 at 3.1, where you're talking about enforcement in premises which the council own, and it says here, operate. In actual fact, the template that most other councils seem to have chosen or use is premises which the council own but do not occupy. There's a difference, because if we own it and operate from it, or operate it, we then have our own health and safety team, and we cannot enforce against ourselves. The health and safety executive or other authorities would come in and do it, and that's why it says own but do not occupy, or should say that. And as I say, I would urge officers to check with these other councils, because it is quite clear in their template, which is almost word for word what these are, it's a totally different meaning. And I think that is very important, and especially when you go on to 4.2 where it says consistency. We'd like to be consistent not just with the rest of Kent, but probably with the rest of England, because the law goes across the whole country. I'm concerned not with this council's actions, but with the idea that cutting red tape has actually meant that we stop regular inspections, because the health and safety executive did exactly the same thing. They cut down on their staff and then didn't do regular inspections of businesses they're supposed to inspect. They relied upon, as you said earlier, targeted approaches, which is another way of saying we'll do the same job but with less people. And that worries me a lot, especially in health and safety. I think it's very important. And finally, I think we do well to consult perhaps with our trade union accredited representatives, because I have to say, having spent 20 years as a trade union congress approved health and safety official, their training is far better than any training that is on offer to local government and private industry, because they know it inside out and they've been doing it for years. And perhaps if we could pick up some hints from them along the way, I'm sure they'd be only too pleased to help, because it's in everyone's interest that we get this right from the start.
Thank you, Councillor Gregory. We'll take those points on board and we'll have a look at it. Thank you. Councillor Gain.
Thank you, Chair. It's a comment really. In the policy, item 3, background, it states the primary responsibility for ensuring health and safety in the workplace lies with those who create the risk, duty holders, and in particular employers and the self-employed have a need to recognise their responsibility for managing health and safety. Part of the Act actually does include employees who also have a duty to manage the risk. And I do believe that employees should be mentioned in that sentence. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Gain. We can include that in the policy, thank you. Does Cabinet agree to the adoption of the health and safety enforcement policy subject to changes that we make? Thank you.